Hola, beautiful FirstGen, ¿cómo estás? It's Priscilla, your intuitive prima, but you already knew that because you're listening to the FirstGen Healing podcast. And well, let me tell you, it is Monday night, and I have been having visita in the house and just a lot of different things going on. And I honestly didn't remember that mañana is Tuesday, and I was like, OMG, I can't leave my beautiful fellow first gens on healing and awakening journeys without their episode. So today's episode is probably going to be the least planned out episode that you will hear from me. I do have a general theme about what I'm going to talk about because there's a couple of things that I have been like stringing a theme of the week or theme of the weeks, a bi-weekly theme, including my newsletter, and the good hijas, hijos, hijes, gone baddish community, and then these podcast episodes. So the last couple of weeks, we have been focusing on first-gen guilt and perfectionism, and now we are moving into judgment. So what do I mean by judgment? Well, the topics that actually I've been picking out and that I picked out for the good hijas, hijos, hijes community are based off of the patterns or the themes that have come up the most in my one-on-one sessions. So if you didn't know, I have been a guide, intuitive guide / coach for 2 years already. Wow. Specifically for the first gen community, specifically for Latinas, Latinos, Latines on healing and awakening journeys. And so in working one-on-one with people, there are common themes that come up or things that kind of impact everyone, maybe not in the same way, but definitely like there's aspects of it in everyone's journey. So, por ejemplo, judgment. So in the conversations that I have with people one-on-one, what I started to notice is that there is this inclination to judge oneself. So typically the people that I work with, and I bet 99.9% of you are super kind, loving, giving people. I feel like that's what I tend to attract through the work that I do. It's people that are family oriented or were at some point that really care about people, and that want to do right by others. And so it's very interesting because you guys, I'm going to include you, okay? But if this doesn't resonate, it's okay. You can be like, not me, girl. But you guys tend to be super friendly or just be really nice. Like you are good people, And so it's interesting because in sessions, although I know that you would never talk to someone like rude unless it's warranted or anything like that, what would happen is in these conversations, I would hear, oh, I know this is really stupid, but I know this is going to sound dumb, but I know like I need to get over it, or yeah, I know I'm like over emotional, or I should, etc. Right? Or I know I talk really fast, so I'm sorry, or sorry if I'm talking really slow. Oh yeah, I hate that about myself. Things like that, which are judgments, right? Judgment over self. And how I started to perceive it is that these are things that some people say kind of as protection, kind of like maybe at some point in some way or another, I was judged for this. So in order to ganarte, let me judge myself first so that you don't judge me for it. And I'm already kind of like protecting myself. It's like a form of protection. And so that's what I started to sense, is that even though those beautiful first gens that I was getting to work with one-on-one, or that I get to work with one-on-one, are typically not like that towards others, there's this internalized negative voice or way of speaking to oneself that is impatient, that is judgmental, that nitpicks, and that is not patient, or I think I already said that, but it's like this other than voice. And so in sessions, typically I'll call it out, I'll be like, did you notice that you say this a lot, or that you pick this out about yourself? And typically there's something tied to it, like, oh yeah, it's because blank, blank, blank. But what people typically don't notice is like that they're the ones now that are carrying through that judgment, that they're the ones now that are like, maybe they haven't heard that judgment since they were teenagers. Like maybe you haven't heard that you laugh too loud since you were 5. However, your subconscious wants to protect you. And so now you apologize for laughing too hard for the rest of your life, or you judge yourself like you're laughing too hard, you need to be more quiet, or you internalize it as like, I shouldn't take up space, I shouldn't be loud, I shouldn't use my voice. And so judgment can be information, but it can block you from being your true self. A lot of people, without realizing it, they internalize so much everything that they were told because you might have had like this desire to be good, to be liked, to be loved. So whenever something was told to you, you internalize it and you're like, I'm going to make sure that I'm not this, or I'm going to make sure to stay within these lanes. And what you may not have realized is that box that you existed within, or maybe when you were born, there was no box. But once you started to grow up, your parents gave you a box, then society gave you a smaller box, or your friends gave you a smaller box, or your bullies, or whatever it was, created smaller and smaller boxes to exist within, to the point where your true self is suffocating, where you don't even know who you really are and who you're meant to be. Detecting, I guess, that judgment is important, not only because like, oh, you need to love yourself. Well, yes, but sometimes it's hard to sometimes you don't love yourself because you don't even know who you really are yet. And that's the crazy part, is like, when I start to work with someone, sometimes they feel that tension, they feel that suffocating box, right? This box is too small. But there's a lot of fear around stepping outside of the box because it might shift the way that you relate to others, the way that others love you, who's in your life or not. And so it's a lot of switching the judgment for love or understanding or curiosity. But typically when you start to do that, when you start to reframe, when you start to recognize that judgment, that voice isn't actually yours. You would never actually talk to yourself that way. When you start to realize that, it's a beautiful switch. It's beautiful because you start to allow for who are you. And maybe at the end of the day, once you start to laugh again how you were meant to laugh, you realize, maybe I do want to change my laugh. Okay, but at least it's because you decided that, not because others told you to. You get me? So many of us, and I'm including myself because it's the journey that I was on, I didn't know myself. I tied my identity to so much of what I was told I should be, or who I should be, or how I should be. Super extra respectful, the good girl, the responsible one, right? And I didn't know myself outside of that. And so I couldn't like myself. I couldn't truly love myself. I couldn't truly see myself. And even though I wanted to be seen by others, it didn't matter how much other people saw me, let's say, or recognized me, because it wasn't the real me. It was a facade. It was a version of me that I created to exist in the worlds that I needed to, or at least that I thought I needed to create and exist, and be a part of. So with that, that's the theme of these weeks. It's judgment. It's recognizing when are you using that judgmental voice, trying to identify like who is it coming from, right? Like whose voice is this really? And you might notice that it's not just one person's voice. It might be a combination of many people's voices. But it's so beautiful when you start to quiet those voices, because at the end of the day, the most empowering switch that you can make is making your voice the most important one, the one that you care about the most. The switching the voice of authority of others to yours, because sometimes we give more weight to other people's voices and we see that as like, oh, it's like because they know better, because they are better, because they know better, because they've achieved more, because et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's what the world wants you to believe, right? Everyone else knows better than you. Everything is better than you. You need so much improvement, like physically, mentally, emotionally, all of that. And nothing or no one redirects you back to you and says, what do you think? What do you feel? And judge yourself through your scale, not anyone else's. Rebalancing the scale, attuned to you, to your true inner self. And so judgment is one of those layers, as is perfection, like we talked about in the past, as is guilt. There's just so many things, like pressure, right? That first gen guilt, the first gen pressure, the expectations, the needs, etc. So once you start to peel those layers off and be bold and courageous enough to do so, or create enough safety for you to feel safe enough to do so, you're going to start to really get to know your true self outside of all of those things. And that is the ultimate goal, because right there is where the gold is. That's the part of you that, holds the fulfillment, that holds the love, that holds a lot of what you're looking for in outside places, So I hope that this mini short episode served you and your journey in one way or another, and gave you kind of a good intro into judgment and what role that can play in your life. And, we're going to discuss this further in the Good Hijas, Hijos, Hijes, Gone Badish community. If you want to join us, we meet every other Thursday. And so our next meeting isn't this week, but it is next week on August 8th, I believe. So you still have some time if you want to join us. It's a monthly commitment, and we have meetings bi-weekly. So monthly financial commitment, there we go. And it's a bi-weekly meetings. So we're going to dive deeper into judgment, and you're going to get to be surrounded by fellow FirstGens. And we, typically do a grounding practice together también. I talk a little bit about the topic, maybe go into a little bit deeper than I did today. And then I typically ask discussion questions or leave some room for sharing so that you can hear other FirstGens and how they're managing judgment and what type of judgment they've experienced, and how it's impacted them, how they're overcoming it, etc. So if you're interested in that, the link will be in the description of this episode. So make sure that you check it out. It's $44.44 a month, so it's not a huge commitment, and it's a beautiful space where you get to talk and be in community with fellow FirstGens. I think that's it, FirstGen. Of course, if you want to work one-on-one with me, there's different ways to do that. So I'm just going to direct you to the link in the description of the episode. Ahí va a estar all of the information. Okay, pues FirstGen, thank you so much for listening to this episode. We will be returning to typical guest episodes in the future. I don't have a date for you yet. I am currently in networking phase. So, networking with people, getting more guests for the podcast. And once that kind of comes to fruition again, then we will start having our part 1s, part 2s again. But for now, you get to hang out with me and spend some time, get to know me. I get to share some info with you también. So I hope you're enjoying them. So, okay, pues FirstGen, remember that I love you, I love me, and I can't wait for you to love yourself. Bye.